David has said, there have been many eloquent and heartfelt tributes paid to Drew since his passing on Monday morning. Leader, ambassador, visionary, champion, an innovator, articulate and a strategist. He was all of these things and much, much more, but he carried all of these accolades so humbly and certainly didn't search out glory. That was the mark of Drew. He just wanted to get the job done in a respectful and dignified way. I first met Drew when I was a young Unionist student at Queen's University and then subsequently within the Unionist Party. And at that time he had been in the UDR and he was a councillor in Banbridge. And he was one of the few from the so-called missing Unionist generation who engaged in public service during the Troubles. So many of those from his generation with a professional background had opted out of frontline politics. But Drew Nelson never opted out. He always wanted to contribute to the best of his ability in whatever organisation he was involved in. He was a committed Unionist who always looked beyond the narrow interest to the greater goal of working to strengthen the Union he so cherished. He was instrumental in setting up the Unionist Graduates Association, a vehicle established to capture those young professionals who had just left university in order to keep them involved in unionism. As well as political meetings, the Graduates Association was also a very important way for us to socialise together. Who can forget those UGA barbecues at his home after the demonstration in Scarva when some of us took over his kitchen? I'm still not quite sure what his mum and dad made of it all. During those difficult days in 1998, around the time of the Belfast Agreement, Drew was the senior man when some of us were labelled the baby barristers by the media. We often laughed as 3 of the 6 so-called baby barristers were actually solicitors, but as always, some never let the facts get in the way of a catchy headline. Drew was a thinker, and when those of us who were privileged enough to count him as a friend sought his advice, he always responded with balanced and considered advice. Drew was never given to trite and glib statements. Wise counsel from him was always the order of the day, and it was deeply appreciated. Many of us here today can testify to the fact that his advice stood us in good stead. His work with university lodges and fostering the future for the order will stand the test of time. He created the Orange Community Network to be an effective vehicle for those from the Orange family to work together and to get things done. And right up until just a few weeks ago, he was still engaged in that work in his conversations with me. Again, working to support others and other of his hallmarks. Drew Nelson never lost touch with those who he was or where he came from. And that is why he was loved by us all. He could speak so eloquently with those he lobbied and influenced, bringing the message of Orangeism across the world, but equally he was almost more comfortable speaking to brethren in an Orange Hall in a small townland in rural Ulster.